Good afternoon and welcome to the Biomethane Journey Net Zero, a marathon organized by the Fiorentini Group. A marathon from the point of view of the rapidity we will ask from speakers. So in just a few minutes, they will be asked to give their contributions on one of the many aspects of the world of biomethane. A marathon that in 2 hours will try to touch on all the points, and this is something that is fairly unusual. So we have the ambition of covering so many topics in such a short time. So at this point, I will give the floor to the first guest, Cristiano Nardi, Executive Head of the Fiorentini Group. Here you are, welcome. Even if you are the host. So thank you, Maurizio. As usual, I would like to thank all of you who are taking part in this event, and I would like to thank all the guests, since we will have a very intense program. We will move to the topics that are particularly timely. Why is Pietro Fiorentini in the world of biomethane, and how did we get here? So the group covers the whole chain from upstream to distribution. Therefore, our technology and know-how enables us to deal with the challenge of biomethane and the production of biomethane, starting from what we know. And what was not part of our portfolio of solutions has been added to our know-how. So from the treatment of biogas to turn it into biomethane, to be injected in the grid and to be compressed and liquefied, we cover all the solutions down to the data management for controlling plants with our Terranova company, that is the company dedicated to software solutions. All this is part of our policy of environmental responsibility that sees us involved at all levels with a focus on renewable energy and gases, the world of water, where we have a strong bond with regards to smart measures, hence the use of synergies that have seen us being the protagonist in the gas world, as far as the world of waste management, where both in terms of solutions and in terms of software, we try to integrate our offering and responsibility towards this world and demanding needs of the so-called circular economy. Certainly, biomethane is an opportunity, and I'm sure you know that there are very challenging goals that may be further revisited. By 2030, we have a general goal of achieving 37 billion cubic meters from biomethane, and the Italian part envisages an incentive of almost 2 billion to be used by 2026. And this deadline, which we feel as a natural deadline for the plans, is very close to us. And therefore, it places an industrial challenge before us, a financial challenge to explore these opportunities. Our commitment goes beyond the purely industrial one. We want to play an active role at all levels to make this sector and this opportunity of biomethane part of the legislation within a European competitiveness plan that should be fair and that should see all interests in all over Europe in line, because obviously we can't just think of the Italian scenario. Our look must be more comprehensive towards Europe, and in particular we should look at the world, because this is not merely a European opportunity. So probably Italy and Europe are the readiest markets, though. We are carrying out important investments in technological innovation. Two initiatives are in place. First, this biofarm initiative, where we study the biomethanation in Germany near Munich. And it's a lab that enables us to analyze a very important topic in power to gas, as well as many other timely topics. And the project with our HERA customer, which is Synbios, which is a pilot that is very important and very challenging, as is the scenario, the landscape of coming years. But following the instructions of Maurizio, I would like to end here. I would like to thank you all, and I would like to take this opportunity to share an introductory video. Then I'll give the floor to our guests for today, and I will come back at the end of the event. Thank you very much, and have a great day. So still less than 1% of the gas that is injected in grids is of organic origin, is a sustainable gas. We may never reach 100%, but for sure there is a path to be followed that is very important in what is considered the most mature biofuel, whose task, also from an environmental point of view, after seeing in the past that we were misled with some biofuels during their first generation. So now we start our marathon, starting from the role that biomethane can play in the ecological transition. So I would like to invite Mr. Zeno Marani, Renewable Production Division Leader of Pietro Fiorentini. Welcome. So start talking about this aspect, so the role of biomethane and how you're equipped to deal with that. The floor comes to you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to start this discussion because biomethane is a topic I'm particularly fond of, and it has been so for many years now. I would like to thank the guests who accepted the invitation to join the discussion, because I think it's very important to share it. What is biomethane and why do we want to talk about it? Biomethane is a gas obtained from refining biogas from anaerobial digestion. It is a gas that is obtained through this type of refining process, getting to a methane percentage of up to 97%. And biomethane can then be injected into the network for distribution, or it can be used as a fuel, both as a gas and as a liquid. Since biomethane is a perfect example of circular economy. It fully represents the activities and goals that were decided and shared by the European Union, first with the Green Deal and then with the Repower Europe project. So why, compared to other renewables sources, is biomethane so useful for the ecological transitions? Well, there are many significant advantages. First, cost effectiveness. I continue saying that the production cost depends on the project sustainability, which is important to be studied. Infrastructure, well, it doesn't need any costs because it is normally an existing infrastructure. And emissions. Emissions are avoided because biomethane is a real alternative to fossil fuels. And then one of the characteristics we often give for granted, but that I think are worth underlining, is regularity. Biomethane, unlike other renewable energies, it is an energy that may be potentially produced 24/7 because it doesn't depend on natural sources, but it depends on operators, on the ways we run the plant, and on the availability of the biomasses fed into the system. We talked about a very important target, which is extremely ambitious. We are aware of that, and we can recognize that from the diagram we see on this slide. Evidently, the numbers are important, ambitious. 3 BCMs of biomethane are produced in Europe, 17 of biogas, and we would like to get to 35 BCMs in 2030. Considering that in biogas the quantity of methane ranges between 50 and 60%, we can imagine how important and ambitious this target is. How can we achieve it? We can do it in 2 ways: building new systems, plants, or upgrading, revamping existing plants. In Italy now, there are 2,000 plants, many of which can be changed from producing biogas for electricity to biogas for biogas. So the goal of all this is that of obtaining a system, an energy system that is more resilient and sustainable. The Pietro Fiorentini portfolio now covers the entire chain of biogas transformation into biomethane, from anaerobic digestion to the connection point. We have got the upgrading cabin, the biomethane injection into the grid. We can offer biomethane liquefaction, which will be dealt with later, BREMI, and then a technical service that is extremely consolidated and tested by years of technical service on the existing Pietro Fiorentini plants. Today, Pietro Fiorentini is on the market with a dual role. So in addition to being a technology provider, we are also financial investors, and I, in particular, represent this business line. So we try to identify sustainable opportunities from a technical point of view and from a financial point of view. And I would like to say a couple of words about this concept. That is the fact that in the past 20 years in electric or biogas, we learned a lot. we learned that, as our friend Piero Gattoni will explain, we can do good biogas or good biomethane, and this means one thing, which is a must, namely starting from a principle which is that of respecting the land, respecting the players of the area, and so we consider it fundamental having in our investments the involvement of local players and local stakeholders, because we have a technological expertise and we know that biomethane is produced and is the result of a biological process. There is an infeed and outfeed, and what has to be managed and the success of the investment will depend on our ability to manage the area and its players, respecting them. So I would like to thank you very much, and I'll give the floor to the next speaker. Thank you. Thank you to Zeno Marani. So we heard about sustainability, and I see Donatella Banzato is connected with us. Welcome. Interdepartmental Center Giorgio Levi cases of the University of Padova, where you have been studying these topics for years, that is energy. And she will remember one of the reasons why we are trying at our time to revolutionize the production system of energy, because we are using too fast energy. And in particular, we are using up all the available resources. And she would like to tell us why biomethane can play an important role from this point of view. Donatella Banzato. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be with you today to talk about circular economy linked to biomethane. And for that, an introduction is necessary, talking about the overshoot day. It indicates the official exhaustion of the renewable resources that the Earth can generate in 365 days. This date is calculated every year, and for every country by a body starting from the ability of the Earth to generate and the consumptions from human actions. The overshoot day arrives earlier and earlier, and the ability of filtering CO2 decreases every year, and every year the planet requires additional stocks, causing greenhouse gases. In brief, at the moment, we would need about 1.8 Earths to satisfy the needs and to keep our lifestyle in general. The most developed countries from an economic point of view, as you can see on the slide, are the ones that have got a higher impact on the Earth's ecosystems, because on average, the standards of living are very high and people consume a higher amount of resources to satisfy their needs. If we all acted as the majority of European countries, we would need almost 3 Earths to satisfy our consumption trends. To find a balance between consumption and resources, we have to go back 50 years at the end of the 60s, as you can see on this chart. In 1971, indeed, the overshoot day was on the 31st of December, whereas in 85, that was anticipated to the 8th of November. In 95, it was the 7th of October. In 2005, it was the 26th of August. In 2019, it was the 29th of July, and then the 22nd of August in 2020, after the restrictions imposed by the pandemic. And in 2023, well, in Italy, the overshoot day was last 15 May. It means that we have already consumed in slightly more than 4 months the resources that we would have had for the whole 2023. So humanity continues producing and consuming, only thinking of now and here, without worrying about what will happen to our planet in the future. Even if the indicator of the ecological footprint have limits and do not enable us to understand the relationship between environmental impact and Earth capacity, it is clear that our lifestyles are not sustainable in the long term and have a negative effect on the planet as much as the overpopulation. The current linear development model has a limit that imposes limits on the resources. So in a world of finite resources, we have an increasingly more limited availability of natural resources, which causes volatility in the prices of raw materials, as well as instability of procurements, which is what we are experiencing right now. In addition to this, we have got huge environmental impacts as a consequence of human activities that produce waste that cannot be reintroduced in nature. The aim of the circular economy model is to maintain the intrinsic value of each product as long as possible by extending its life cycle. This change, this paradigm shift has a transversal impact on the entire production system and generates new wealth through product, process and business model innovations in all the sectors of the economy. Biomethane can therefore be the circular solution for agriculture. Well, renewable energy, CO2 storage in the soil, alternative fuels, smart farms and precision agricultures are the smart strategies that farmers can deploy by setting up an anaerobic digestion plant for the production of biomethane. This model can be realized everywhere because these technologies can be easily implemented and used even in developing countries. It is also a technology that allows to work with various matrices in different agricultural and ecological situations, as well as in different climatic zones from Norway to Morocco via continental Europe. So thanks to digestate, we can give our farmers a means for organic fertilization also in absence of manure. So I think this is circular economy. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Donatella Banzato. So this is the framework we are working in. Now, this is the time for some contributions from abroad, taking stock of the state of the art and the market in Europe.
Welcome, Mr. Decker. Can you hear me?
Oh. Yes, I certainly can.
CEO of BIP, which is the Biomethane Industrial Partnership, and CEO of EBA, which is the European Biomethane Association, who's going to introduce us about the role of biomethane by the point of view of Europe. It's up to you.
Thank you. And maybe just quickly a correction. I'm not the CEO of the BIP, but I am, of course, involved in the BIP. But
yeah.
I do not see my presentation. Right. Okay, there it is. So let me first say congratulations also to Ms. Banzato to say so clearly why we need to also implement biomethane and to act fast. The EBA, which I represent as CEO, is actually representing the full value chain of biomethane, representing a total 8,000 stakeholders within Europe, with 46 national associations connected to that, but also research centers and a growing number of companies. So let me give you a flavor of what is happening in Brussels and within Europe. And at this moment, I'm in Brussels, and there is a lot going on. Actually, we finally get some recognition, and there is a positive historic shift for biomethane in our scene. So first of all, of course, I already alluded to earlier, the political target has been set, 35 billion cubic meters of biomethane. To that, the European Commission has put in place also a biomethane action plan. And as already said by the moderator, we have established, together with the European Commission, with the member states in the full value chain, a biomethane industrial partnership in which we are trying to work together to make sure that we can reach the target of 35 BCM. Of course, within everything, the policy files are moving, and also the revised renewable energy targets are there. They're moving up, but they can be even more to our opinion, but it is already very good. And we see as well that we start to realize that if we want to need to go fast, then also on the bureaucracy side, so on the permitting side, we need to step up our game, and there are good incentives going on, especially with regard to permitting. Now, how does this look like? Where do we go to, and where are we at this moment? In 2021, so this I'm quoting for a report from last year, we see that we have a production of 196 terawatt hours within Europe of biogas, and with that, 3 billion cubic meters of biomethane. Actually, here it shows already the 3.5 billion cubic meters, and maybe you have seen the latest press release we sent out yesterday, that over a period of 1 year, we see a growth of biomethane installations of 30%. Bearing in mind that we had already 1,000 installations plus, this is a magnificent and fast growth. Now, we've been talking about 2030, but I would like to give you an outlook where we are going in 2050. Because focusing on 2030 is nice, but the potentials for biomethane are much larger. And I think there are two things you need to remember from probably this slide. One is, in 2050, we can fulfill 40 to 60% at the minimum of the future gas demand. The other part will be, hopefully, green hydrogen. The other part, which you need to remember, is that potential for filling the total gas need within Europe in 2050 is built up with sustainable feedstocks, not competing with food and feed, and even allowing room for other biomass uses which are out there. So meaning that this is a quite realistic scenario, and then we don't even take into account other feedstocks. So what are our next steps and challenges? We in Europe, we have a problem that we need energy security. That is something we can provide as biomethane. It is local, but we are acting global. Beside that, beside the electrons of electricity, we need the molecules, and there we step in again. We need large potentials of renewable energy, and there we can contribute as well. So we need to make sure that within all this, we stay sustainable, we build our knowledge base, and make sure that we stay competitive so it's payable for the citizens within Europe. Now, I would like to also give you a quick flavor of what is happening. The BIP has been mentioned as well. So there we are working with various task forces. One of the task forces consists of the member states. And here you see the overview of the member states already taking part of that. And important to say, the 35 BCM target is now being forged into the NECPs, and hopefully this will add up in total to 35 BCM as well. So I would like to close with one more slide. I started off that biomethane is getting the attention in Europe, and it is finally getting recognized. This year we will start with the European Biomethane Week, and that means that we will have a full week across Europe spending time and attention for biomethane. That is week 43, and there we have also the conference with regard to biomethane as well. So just to give you a flavor, I go over it very quickly. I do not have much time, but thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Harmen Dekker, thank you. Abbiamo sentito
So we heard a very ambitious goal, I would say impressive target. So the idea of covering between 40 and 60% of current imports of natural gas in Europe with biomethane. It is a long way, and we still have a fairly long path before us for the afternoon. So I would like to invite Francesco Fortuna, Italy Country Manager of Pietro Fiorentini. And here we enter the details of how you are equipped as Pietro Fiorentini for all this, let's say, biomethane game. Yes, thank you. Allow me to thank, first of all, our guests and to introduce this Italian section. I would like to thank our colleagues of SNAM, Italgas, and HERA, who will help me give an Italian picture to identify the path of Italy in the world of biomethane and in general in the world of renewable energy. We talked about history, and this is a history that we carried out, we built with our small and large customers, and that history started in 1940, where we started producing and consuming natural gas in Italy. Then we have arrived to the current situation where we are key players with millions of installations in Italy. Today, in certain areas of transportation and distribution of gas, in high pressure, for example, there are areas where 2 out of 3 products are Fiorentini, as well as district stations where we have 3 out of 4 stations, and 1 counter out of 3 smart meters is PF. And as my colleagues mentioned before, we can rely on a very strong service system with more than 100 lorries that leave our service centers to provide services to our customers all over Italy. So our chain, our network, it's a typical one for natural gas. So we start from extraction, and then we get to our homes, and we manage the data of our consumptions and our alarms that support security aspects as well. So today our goal is that of expanding our influence area and becoming strong in renewable energy. How? Today there are 2 ways we are paving. The first one is the green gas value chain, where we have the goal of producing molecules then we move on to sector coupling and carbon capturing. That is the actual capturing of CO2 going through what? Smart networks capable of receiving gas, managing it and transporting it. We are talking about interesting products. We're talking about hydrogen as well, but we want this smart grid to be effective. Now, I deal with the Italian business, and we now focus on biomethane. Why? Because ministerial decree of last autumn, so now 6 months after its issue, well, that was a great stimulation for the production of biomethane in Italy. Biomethane that comes from agriculture, and so we are offering greenfield plants, and together with agriculture we can produce new plants, and we can be available for this type of production. On the other hand, we have the possibility of having the entire part of production and management of the molecule also from wastewaters or other biomasses. So what has happened in the last 6 months? We are very happy for that. We are happy as well because the results are thrilling, and in advanced markets like France, the results are even more interesting. But having now 25 compressor stations in biomethane, having 12 upgrading stations, having systems, liquefaction systems that are being built, and also 30 injection into methane grids with SNAM, well, is certainly a great success. To be practical, a couple of examples of what we have done so far. This is Turin with the smart. So it produces about 1,800 nano cubic meters per hour, with the possibility of getting to even higher amounts. Then we have an agricultural implementation by biomethane cella dati, where we transform the production of manure in a combination between an energy company and a local producer. And we set up a plant of 600 cubic meters per hour that is a little bit a pioneer of these types of systems in Italy. But in addition to biomethane, we have this today. And this is a project that was mentioned by our head, Cristiano Nardi, and this project is called Symbios. And here in Bologna, we will recover what is biogas today to turn it first into biomethane directly, and then collecting the residual CO2 together with the hydrogen we will be producing with our equipment, so with our brands ITER and Biocomp compression. We will move it into a biomethanator, and hydrogen and CO2 will produce a CH4 that will be in turn injected into grids. Another process is that of supporting the grid. So what is the goal we have today? We want and must use a general Italian infrastructure, a huge one, gas gets everywhere, and we should use it as a vehicle to carry out a sort of gas self-consumption. It doesn't make sense to use up energy to repump gas on high-pressure grids when we may consume it on-site. So this has pushed us to develop projects in other parts of the world, which are the so-called reverse flow projects that we call BRMI, that are actually becoming popular in Italy, with some resistance and sometimes some difficulties, which hopefully will be overcome shortly. To conclude, Pietro Fiorentini is very much involved in the development of new legislation to favor the introduction of new technology and techniques. We are working a lot and very well within the committees in CIG in Italy, H2IT in hydrogen, Anima as Confindustria, and especially now with CIP, the Italian Biogas Consortium that I know. And I would like to introduce my other head, Piero Gattoni, who will follow me with his contribution. Thank you, Francesco. You have actually already introduced Piero Gattoni, so welcome, Piero. So we have known each other for a long time. So we can continue with this overview, listening to the point of view of who produces biogas, which is the precursor of biomethane. So the Italian Biogas Consortium, and Gattoni is the head of this consortium. So tell us, Piero, tell us your point of view, and especially tell us about this registered trademark, which is well done biogas. It's a little bit like Parmigiano cheese, because like biomethane, you can do it well or a little bit less well, for example, using bad biomasses. Well, obviously, also from an environmental point of view, that would make a difference. So thank you, Maurizio. Allow me to thank the head, Cristiano Nardi, and all the friends of Fiorentini for the invitation in this debate, a debate that is important when events that have occurred over the last few years have changed a lot. both in terms of citizens and in terms of European business people, with regards to the production of food and energy. I think it's important right now to repeat the concept that doing well has always been the goal of the last 15 years in our sector. And it is a goal that comes from the fact that this world is the result of the combination of different elements of excellence of Made in Italy, of the Made in Italy industry. Well, we are the country with the largest number of PDOs. I am a producer of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. I can't talk about it because otherwise we won't talk about biogas, but as a matter of fact, that is the core of our work. And on the other side, there is the aspect of managing waste, and so the collection of the organic part of waste, on which we have developed excellent models in Europe. And then there is the topic of technology and distribution of gas. So Italy has methanized Europe. So starting from these assumptions, I think that the figures of well-done biogas in Italy that produced 2,000 plants, 5 billion investments in the primary sector, and the positive results in terms of a renewable chain that has remained in Italy are nothing compared to the power of this model that together with many of the friends that spoke before me, and also lately with other players. So we have tried to, let's say, carry this approach to Europe, because we have to be aware that decisions are made in Brussels, and we have to, therefore, demonstrate the good basis of our models and share it with other countries. So what is the strength? What is the strength, Piero? Well, the strength of the model lies in the connection between agricultural activities and energy-producing activities. Indeed, anaerobial digestion is proven to be not only a bioenergy, but an indispensable means for the ecological transition. So a good gas, well, we can't see innovation separately. We have to see a complex model where, in addition to producing energy from byproducts and from waste, we can also integrate agricultural production, increasing rotations, fertilizations with organic manure, so producing positive factors for several markets. So we are talking about a true circular economy model, so producing more with less. So being aware that we have to build efficiency in our production chains, but the true model of circular economy is not producing less, it is producing more with less. And this was the big debate that is still on the table today in Brussels. But what we're trying to say today at an Italian level is that we are going through a moment of development. We have an important program linked to recovery that envisages 1.7 billion euro investments plus 200 million investments for agriculture. So it's a system that covers all agricultures in terms of investments to produce 2.3 BCMs of biomethanes for industrial use. So let's consider that this model was submitted by the Italian government before the Ukraine war. So after the pandemic, we were not still talking about gas. And this is evidence of the fact that our country was indeed a leader in the ecological transition that could not only be electrical, but that needed a balance between electrical renewable sources and renewable gases. Today we have to speed up. Some points were mentioned before that we are using as a consortium. First, a strong link with Brussels. All community directives must favour the achievement of the 35 billion cubic meters of biomethanes, which is in line with the Italian goals. We're talking about 10% of consumption. But it's important for companies to have the tools, because if Brussels gives us a goal of 35 billion cubic meters, but then they tell us that we can't produce biomethane with certain crops, with the sub-productions of the Mediterranean economy and so on and so forth, it means we don't have the tools. Then there is an infrastructural topic that was highlighted by Francesco Fortuna. So today, the times for the injection to the grid are still long. We lost to you. You're back. Could you please conclude, because we are running a little bit late? So the aspect of authorizations taking too long. Infrastructures, so better connection between transportation and gas distribution to favor the injection in the grid, and then an adaptation of values to the current economic scenario that has changed in the last 2 years. And last but not least, a forecast of companies that are producing biogas and can't produce biomethane and must continue their production. I hope that bioenergy in agriculture will find the right space that it should have, so that Italy can become free. So thank you, Mr. Gattoni. I'm familiar with this topic, and I know that with one technology, the one of producing biogas, or producing energy, fertilizers, and also disposing of waste is a great opportunity. And indeed, the crisis we went through did not only have a link with fuels, but also with the provision of fertilizers. Now, we will move on with the last moment to this last part, during which we are giving an overview of the Italian and European situation. And we will have a short roundtable with Domenico Maggi. Welcome.
Good afternoon and welcome. The head of International Relations and European Affairs of the SNAM Group, and then Andrea Lanuzza. Welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. Operation Director of Italgas Reti, and Marco Di Silvestro, Energy Manager of Air Ambiente. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. So we have the company mainly dealing with transporting gas in Italy, which is a company also dealing with gas distribution in Italy, the other one, and a multi-utility company using and producing biomethane. So, Domenico Maggi, about SNAM. What is your approach in terms of biomethane? What are your perspectives, the perspective you see for the future? First of all, we would like to thank Pietro Fiorentini for this very welcome invitation, and I'd like to thank all of the connected friends, Mr. Gattoni, and all of the colleagues who joined us and have just presented their views and opinions. Of course, we've been working in a very strictly intertwined way, especially in Brussels, together. So, together with the government, due to the current situation, the crisis in Ukraine and all of the present situations, we're trying to act in two directions. So energy security, energy safety on the one hand, and energetic transition on the other side, as two distinctive concepts. But as a matter of fact, since we have a new situation, a new context, these two ways must be joined together. And the industrial plan 22-26 for SNAM that we just presented finds itself exactly in this scenario, in this framework. So on the one hand, we need to guarantee and ensure interdependence of the natural flows and natural gas through infrastructures like the ones we have in Trombino and Ravenna, and reinforcing the Adriatic coast infrastructure, agreements with Algeria, and also agreements in terms of supplying from Azerbaijan. But of course, the industrial plan mainly focuses on energetic transition, like hydrogen, CCS, carbon capture storage technology, namely efficiency, sustainable mobility, but a vast majority of the forecast, the budget, is for biomethane. So the three numbers are 550 million euro in 4 years for us, for an installed growth of 100 megawatts by 2026, with an energy output in terms of biomethane equal to 100 million cubic meters. This is what we want to aim at during this stage, during this phase. As an infrastructure provider, I'd like to reply to what Mr. Gattinoni said about the joint grids. And SNAM has an important role in this sense, because it is an important stakeholder and partner for the main stakeholders, and indicated 4 solutions that could be very important in terms of SNAM actions. Also because the procedure needs to take into account institutional aspects. So we need measures in order to have an application of the whole process on a national, at a national level, and this based on the law introduced in 21. And also we need to have a detailed planning, so on the part of all of the engineering companies and dedicated companies for transportation. The reduction of the economic budget, and also we have a need to implement all of the regulatory aspects that can favor the installation of local stations in order to maximize the scale economy and reduce the risk of dispersion. So these are the measures that we'd like to implement and that were suggested by SNAM in order to cope with the problems that Piero depicted a few minutes ago. Let me conclude now by telling you my mind, my opinion, which is not a worried opinion, but as a matter of fact an interest in all of the systems we should all have, especially in terms of European approach and European initiatives that will start in 2024. So the new European Commission will start working November 2024, so next year, and I think that we have to play an important game there, because we set the target of 35 BCM for 2030, but of course we have a Net Industry Act that was introduced recently by the European Commission. And biomethane is among one of the 7 strategic technologies that should be fostered on an international level and financed. So there's hydrogen, there are other sources, but also biomethane. So there are a set of policies and measures that are there, but there are also some European Commission proposals that, starting from 2030, will limit the use of biomethane. For instance, a note that was introduced in Italy in terms of regulation of CO2 produced by vehicles, or other initiatives related to the reduction of the use of biomethane. Yeah, I think, yes, I think that the message is clear. So we need to exploit this opportunity, to seize this opportunity, because sometimes you get discording messages also from the European Commission. Also because there are sometimes some games where the action is put forward, but then you have to take a backward action in order to catch up for the mistakes that were done. So Yes, this is actually what I was suggesting based on the work we carried out with Piero. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Maggi. Now, Mr. Lanuzza, we have the witness of distributor here, so Italgas Reti. I'd like to know what your point of view is, what the solutions are that you envisage before the upcoming of the green gases, in particular biomethane, we cannot be distinguished by methane. Luckily enough, as a matter of fact, there's no trademark on the molecule itself. But of course, there are other gas types that are coming over, including hydrogen. So what are you doing right now? Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank Pietro Fiorentini, first of all. Since over 100 years, our distribution grids are distributing gas, and for us, this means means 1,800 municipalities, 1,700 household groups with sub-networks. This is just to tell you how capillary our distribution is, and this is an enabling factor for us to receive new gas types. So if we weren't so close to our users, to our network, we wouldn't be able to increase our size, in a way, our dimensions. But we have two transformation plans. The first plan implies changing the infrastructure, changing the materials that are not suitable to receive the new gas types, for instance, hydrogen or gas mixtures. And the second set of actions is the digitalization plan for a gas grid. So about 2.5 billion euro investment for digitalization. Why are we stressing digitalization so much? Because up until so far, we were used to a standard grid, which was very similar to the water distribution network. So with gas, you only have one direction. Of course, it's more complicated than water, but you only have one direction. Yeah, I know this because I've also been dealing with waste management and water, so I know how complex this issue can be. But yes, the thing is that we have a linear network. You only have one gas type, which is mainly delivered by the transporters, so by SNAM. The ducts are clean, it's a constant activity, and as a matter of fact, we just have to monitor the performance and make sure that everything is safe and without any problems. But in the future, the network will imply several producers and suppliers. So the concept is very similar to methane, to natural gas. So there are several distribution points and several grids that have to be balanced throughout the day. And then, of course, you need to focus on organic stability, sludges, and all of these aspects. But as a matter of fact, we were used to manage this simple network, the simple grids, and therefore we need to match the demand and offer, and of course make sure that the quality will be stable. So it's a smart grid. It's a sort of smart grid, right? Yes, it's a smart grid. This is what we would like to have. And if digitalization is the enabling factor, we decided to implement a tool which is called Data, which makes it possible for us to control the grid remotely, to start the network and to apply the algorithms that make this balancing possible. So this is what we do in terms of investments. Let me go back to Mr. Maggi's words. Of course, we also need to take into account all of the criticalities for biomethane producers today, which are very often related to the distribution, so the grids. So a very close, very short answer, because we're a bit late. So if biomethane could be fed into the distribution grids, it would be good for you, right? It wouldn't be a problem for you. We will do all that we can do in order to foster this, to facilitate this. Thank you very much. So 2018, you built a biomethane production plant based on organic waste and separate waste collection. So how did you act together with the territory? Because of course it's a local production. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for the invitation. First of all, yes, the experience of the HERA group in treating and valorizing organic waste started in 1981 when the service company Rimini opened the first composting plant for solid urban waste in Rimini, and this was the first concrete example of circular economy with the recovery of materials and the production of quality compost materials. But then innovation went on, and between 2009 and 2012 there were 3 anaerobic digesters that were set up, and together with the material recovery there was also a recovery of energy with the production of electric power. So technological and legal evolution led us to the plant in Sant'Agata Bolognese in 2018, so in the province of Bologna. This plant costed about 35 million euro and was based on revamping of an industrial site. It was an old traditional composting site, and today 100,000 tons solid waste of the local area is treated there, and it produces over 300 million cubic meters every year, which is distributed in the local area. So the will is to give back biomethane produced by the waste of the single municipalities, and therefore we decided to use biomethane locally for local transport. And we had several agreements with public and private institutions. For instance, in the province of Bologna, every citizen can fill at a biomethane ERA station. And thanks to the partnership with Tiber, the transport company from Bologna, biomethane can be used for transport within the city. Just to mention some facts and figures telling you the potential, over 50% of the natural gas fleet of Tiber is fueled without biomethane, and I think this is a very meaningful number. So by the end of 2022, we wanted to make something for the industry as well, not just for the private citizens. So in Spilamberto, in the province of Modena, we worked with Cremonini and we set up another plant, cogeneration plant for advanced biomethane. And we don't just have different waste collection treatment, but also food industry waste treatment. So the strength of these plans relies exactly in the fact that they are strictly intertwined with local area. On the one hand, because they foster correct waste management, and on the other hand, they give back a biofuel to the local area. It's a 0 kilometer sustainable and environmentally friendly fuel that can be used by everybody. And of course, we need to do this in order to cope with the very challenging decarbonation targets set. Thank you very much. Marco Di Silvestro, yes. And then, of course, sometimes you can go over the goals if you involve all of the stakeholders also in the local area. Sometimes you have some obstacles that can be overcome exactly this way. Now, let's focus on France, which is a very important market for Pietro Fiorentini. It's one of the more advanced countries in terms of biomethane. So just to start with, we can listen to Gianluca Benedetti, France country manager of Pietro Fiorentini, talking about this topic. Welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about France, first of all, and then I'm going to talk about Gasfuel, which is a very important company, a very important reality for the French market. It was set up in 1990 and is part of the Fiorentini Group since 2001. And it is a company that was able to catch the evolution of biomethane since then. So at that time, it was about different products, but 2022 was a year when the company acquired other important companies in France, thus developing competences, skills, products, and a stronger presence on the territory. So France is a world leader for injection plants. So there are about 500 plants, most of them for distribution, GDF plants, and so 77 plants for TSO, for transport. The installed capacity is about 10,000 gigawatt-hour a year, which is a very important figure. And you can see that the growth started in 2017, more specifically, and over the last 2 years, 2,000 gigawatt-hour stabilized over these 2 years, and we are getting more incentives just to intensify this capacity. And so what are the reverse flow plans? In summer, the use of gas is lower and the grid is saturated, and therefore it is necessary to stock gas for winter. And this is possible by compressing gas in the grid thanks to transport. So some more facts and figures. 2016, 90 million euro, and 2022, as I was telling you, 75 million is what we reached. So as to the product, 2016, we used to produce locally. Actually, we need to say that Fiorentini and Gasfio have a very verticalized local production. We have a foundry, we have a mechanical assembly, we have residential service and low-pressure plants. We used to produce regulation and measuring low-pressure systems and plants, and Gasfio was trading on the national territory, Fiorentini products, mainly Fiorentini products. Now, 2022, the product portfolio was enriched. The right-hand side part remains very important, the residential part, but also other products were implemented. So pressure regulators, low and high pressure stations. And on the bottom, you can see that we developed the product sales as well as counters and valves for the renewable part of biomethane. And on the left-hand side, you have biomethane and digital product and services. So upgrading biomethane injection and electronics, green services, smart meters, so the digital part. So apart from the turnover, something happened to the company because we moved from 70 to 220 employees. So there are also lots of women, over 50% female staff, and we hired 60 new employees with new competencies. How was this possible? We got government trust and we invested on new products and new systems. We hired new staff with permanent agreements and contracts, and we had some R&D and service corporations for the green departments. Gasfio is in Normandy, and this is the map. The map depicts our installed units, the Fiorentini Gasfio unit. We have over 200 units in France, including transport as well. And one plant a week, overall 1 plant a week is what we produced over the last few weeks. We also have patents, some pending patents for the upgrading biogas part, but the service part is also important. It's very difficult to implement, of course, but on the local area in Normandy, but also on the national territory, we have over 20 skilled technicians in the field. We operate maintenance of biomethane injection stations and biogas upgrading units, and we have additional services, filling services for the stations, for instance, the odorizing element, agents for the gases, and also the metrology parts for volume converters and counters. Pietro Fiorentini and Gasfio are characterized by a local production. They strongly want to locally produce what is locally distributed and sold. This is what we strongly want to implement. We have a site. This is the current site, about 6,000 square meters of offices and production. We have made a €1 million investment in staff, new staff. And for the new plant, we will host the production of green fuels, biomethane first and foremost. We also acquired new generation lawnmowers that we invite you to visit in our websites in Normandy. Thank you very much, Mr. Benedetti, France country manager of Pietro Fiorentini. We stay in France because we'd like to analyze the French markets of biomethane more in depth and the main stakeholders and players in the French market. We'd like to see how they're playing this game, this match. So all of our participants are already connected. Xavier Passemard, biomethane director of GRDF.
Let me say, of the methane in France. Welcome.
Yes, good afternoon.
So, and then it's a pleasure to me to present Jean-Marc Legault, Head of Renewable Gases Development, the GRT Gas, which is the TSO of natural gas in France. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And then Marta Camola Martinez, I hope to make a good pronunciation of your name, Corporate Strategy Department, Senior Analyst at the ENG. So this is a multi-utility, one of the bigger multi-utility, probably the bigger in France. Welcome. So, Xavier, what is the situation of the biomethane market in France, and what is your vision in long term?
Okay. First, thank you for the invitation. As you may know, GRDF is a regulated company which activities are governed by a public service contract. Our main mission is, of course, distribution in France, but other missions are to promote and to accompany the development of green gas in France and to facilitate energy transition in territories with local governments. So what is the situation regarding biomethane market in France? Biomethane market is bullish and rapidly expanding. Over the past 5 years, the market has grown by more than 60% per year. Today, more than 10 terawatt-hours of capacity have been installed, and 570 units has been already commissioned. By the end of the year, the equivalent of 2 nuclear plants will be operational. Biomethane is the only renewable energy that already exceeded the targets set by the French multi-annual energy plan. However, in the current inflationist context, the new projects have difficulty to emerge, and we are waiting for enhanced feed-in tariff and calls for tender for plants of more than 25 gigawatt hours per year. It will hopefully be published before the end of the year. Moreover, a new mechanism called biogas production certificate will be launched within the next few months. It will put an obligation on gas suppliers to secure part of their market share with green gas. That means that in the near future, gas suppliers will finance biomethane producers. Now, what are our expectations for long term? Anaerobic digestion is a strategic lever for achieving France's objective of carbon neutrality, but not the only one. Our major options in renewable gas are pyrogasification, hydrothermal gasification, and also power to gas, without speaking about green hydrogen. The players of the market have set an objective of 20% green gas in the overall gas consumption in 2030, and it represents more than 2,000 extra units. In regard to the evolution of gas consumption for the next 30 years, many discussions are taking place, but nobody can actually tell what the gas consumption will be. What is sure is that the technical potential of renewable gases through biomass is considerable, and in any case will be able to cover 100% of our needs. But before ending, a few words about GRDF relation with GasFio. As you know, GasFio is very active in GRDF biomethane activities, gas kits, chromatograph, THG supply, metrology contract, and third-party maintenance contract. Our desire is to move towards strong performance commitments. We need even more results and even more technical expertise. And of course, we are counting on you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. Now I want to go to Jean-Marc Le Gaulle. Je crois que c'est le bon. Alors, excusez-moi. Sorry, it's better if I speak English. We heard before that even if the molecule is the same, we need some adaptation of the grids, for example, to get in counter to the production, which is not in the same place. I don't know. To match the places of production of biogas. So what are you doing for the moment about this topic?
First, I would like to thank the Fiorentini Group for organizing these fruitful discussions. And to come back to your questions, actually networks are currently facing a real challenge with the development of renewable gases, as we are switching from a situation where gas sources were located at a very limited number of border entry points to a radically different configuration where production, as you all know, is widespread all over the country in a very decentralized way. So in France, we have started as network operators to actually tackle this challenge. As shown by Xavier previously, biomethane has already started to develop significantly in the country, and as a consequence, we have first experience of adapting transmission and distribution networks in France. So to provide you with just precise figures, we are currently developing, and it was also mentioned in the introduction by Mr. Benedetti, we are currently developing at various stages of development 50 reverse flow facilities, out of which 12 are actually in operation. And in addition to this, Xavier could tell it better than I do, but the distribution network operator is also carrying out significant developments, investment on its network. So based on this, I would like to provide you today with the three main lessons we have learned from this experience. First, network adaptations have to be designed, in my view, at a local scale by TSO and DSO really working hand in hand to ensure an optimum scheme is implemented. It should not be done at the headquarters or in a centralized way as it was done before, when the issue was actually to design a national network. The second lesson we learned from this experience is that the network adjustment should not be designed only to enable the injection of today's production projects, but should also be able to integrate a possibility to develop biomethane production in the future, because we expect, and it's been widely discussed today, this production to keep growing, of course. And the last point, which is a key one, is who has to pay for this investment? Before answering this question precisely, I would like to point out a key fact. As shown in a recent report of the French regulator that has been released at the beginning of April, the overall network adaptation to welcome 100% renewable gas in our networks remains really moderated in the long run. So this has nothing to do in terms of orders of magnitude with what is required to adapt the electricity grid to the transition. So based on this, as the investment, the overall long-term investment is moderated, it is viable and wise to set up a regulatory framework allowing network operators to mutualize the cost of this investment between all the network users instead of charging directly the biomethane producers. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. This is a debate that is going on also here in Italy. Almost exactly the same. Thank you for your point of view.
Sure.
Bonjour. Mr. Pasmar before made a mention about the biomethane certificate in Europe. So, Marta Camola Martinez, so how do you see this certificate coming in the next future?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Did you hear the question?
No.
I just wanted you to tell us something more about this biomethane certificate that we are expected to see in the next future.
Okay. What I wanted maybe to pass across to you over was more on certificates globally, so more maybe on the guarantees of origin and the vision around that. If you allow a couple of words around that. So maybe first of all, what I wanted to say is that, with the current drive towards decarbonization and the definition of the needed regulatory frameworks in Europe, the market for biomethane is starting to emerge, and I think that's been highlighted just a while ago with the French example. Also, if we take the Repower EU ambitions, we'll see some 35 BCM of biomethane in 2030. So this is 10 times what we have today. And biomethane certificates, and this is where I wanted to put the focus mainly on not the new instrument that will come to France, but more globally on guarantees of origin as an example of such certificates. Will be, of course, key in deploying the European biomethane market. So this is because they have to track the green credentials of the molecule across markets and also while avoiding, obviously, double counting. So today, only a limited amount of biomethane is exchanged across borders. So this is a fact, but the recently developing an upcoming actually regulation with the RED 2 and RED 3 will hopefully drive the market development and help harmonize and bring some seamlessness across the market. So more from ENG as a participant in a global European market. We are already active with some 3 terawatt-hours of biomethane traded in Europe last year. And we are also having ambitions with 30 terawatt-hours in terms of biomethane supply portfolio in 2030. This is to support our own activities, but also the activities of our clients that want to decarbonize. So we believe that opportunities are out there, and we are confident that they will grow. Hopefully, the ambitions at the European level will actually come to fruition, and we'll see the 35 BCM on the market by 2030. But I think that to get there and going forward globally is what we need is to have coherence across different countries in the application of EU rules, the standardization, harmonization. We also need to see the registries for GOs or guarantees of origin being deployed. And we also need to see how GOs and the sustainability certificates, which will be required also for bigger facilities in Europe can be aligned operationally wise. And obviously for France, the question is also how will we fit into that the new certificates that will be upcoming in the context of the new sort of regulatory setup. So maybe the last point, because maybe I have diverged a little bit from initial question, is to say that on a global level, I think that we all share sort of a worrisome idea of the coherence that might be sort of impinged upon in terms of wider voluntary schemes for carbon accounting. What I mean here is globally the GHG protocol and the uncertainty that there looms a little bit because of the different discussions that are ongoing on the revision of the GHG protocol. So I think that this sort of uncertainty has to be removed. We are working together with other market participants to put the message across in terms of, you know, the recognition of certificates that are market-based certificates for biomethane, because these are one of the tools that we believe help spur the market and help to bring the volumes on the market, align you know, aside with the targets that might be set at national or European level.
Thank you, Marta Camola Martinez. So coherence, more coherence, less uncertainty. Let me say, to resume in a brutal way. Thank you to Marta Camola Martinez, Jean-Marc Le Gaulle, and Javier Pasmar. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Bene, adesso.
So now we move on, and I would like to remind everyone that you can select the language to follow this conference. At the bottom right, you can find the buttons at the bottom
of the screen, and then you'll find the button to push to select the language. Ora apriamo la terza, direi, la terza parte della
Now, the third part of the reflection of this afternoon, I see Luigi Mazzocchi is already connected, and welcome, Luigi. So, Generation Technologies and Materials Department Director of RSE, Ricerca Sistema Energetico, which is part of GSE, and it analyzes as a research center the interactions between the various elements of the energy system. So this is the part that characterizes it the most. So having the repercussions on the world of electricity and gas and vice versa. And with him, we open a part that is particularly dear to me because it's a part that involves me professionally, that is technological innovation and how some innovations are being implemented in this field, which is innovative as definition, but renewing prospects will be very interesting. So we will see the various technologies of biomethanation that enable to increase the methane share within biogas. So this is one of the most important strategies to increase and achieve the very ambitious goals of production of biomethane. Mazzocchi, the floor comes to you. Thank you for your invitation. Thank you, Maurizio. You have already explained very well what we do as RSE. And indeed, this speech that is super short will touch two elements. One, the energy scenario, so how we can imagine the system evolution towards low emissions, and the other one is technologies. So talking about energy scenarios, so we see the decarbonization of Italy by 2030. We see that there is an evolution towards renewable sources, especially sun and wind, that drives to new sources, in particular hydrogen production. But we also see that in the world of gas, there is a significant share of biomethane, 2.6 megatons equivalent, which is in line with the recovery plan goals in Italy. And this value can be achieved leveraging a series of resources, both in agriculture and waste recovery. And then hydrogen will be another element of decarbonization. From this point of view, the strong increase of renewable sources requires new flexibility. So how does the power-to-gas project work? Through electrolysis, we exploit the excess energy and we convert it into hydrogen. That can be used as is in various ways, but it can become the ingredient to obtain other methane, renewable methane. So producing hydrogen from renewable sources, finding a source of carbon dioxide, there is a reaction that produces methane with zero emissions. And this can be injected into the gas grid and replaces fossil fuels. Efficiency is limited, but there are means to improve efficiency. For example, exploiting also the oxygen coming from electrolysis and the heat that may be dispersed. How do we produce methane? A good source is indeed biogas upgrading, what was mentioned by other colleagues. So when I produce biomethane, starting from biogas, I will have rejected CO2 that may be released in the atmosphere. Instead, we want to use it, which becomes the ingredient for renewable methane. In terms of amounts, we consume about 70 billion cubic meters of natural gas every year. That will have to be reduced. We have a goal of about 2.3 BCM a year by 2026, and our cautious assessment is that we may reach 4 billion in 2030. If we imagine of converting all CO2 from biomethane through methanation into renewable methane, we may produce an additional 2.6 BCM a year of additional renewable methane. Let's consider that this would need using an energy of terawatt hours per year that would be produced by 33,000 megawatts of photovoltaic energy. So if we consider that photovoltaic should be about 55 to 60,000 megawatts in photovoltaic energy, we have a potential to recover this excess that may be used to solve a lot of problems linked to excess production. Well, this is the big challenge of energy transition, solving this problem, actually, that we do not have control on when we produce energy. Otherwise, it would be solved. We do have sources, but they produce not when we need energy, but when they want to produce. This is the challenge. This is what makes the game hard. So to win this match, we have a lot of tools, and certainly accumulation, pumping, and control of demand, electrolysis, and the production of renewable hydrogen can be one of the answers. So the project we are carrying out refers to the biomethanation of the process, so the production of renewable hydrogen can be done in different ways. So microorganisms make it in a very interesting way, also because it can be done at low temperatures with not too complex or costly plants. Our goal is not that of inventing this process, which is well known, but improving the performance, so having a higher intensity of production to reduce the production cost. Hence, have a renewable methane that is also reasonably competitive. This is our pilot plant on a smaller scale where we are producing methane from renewable sources. This is just a picture of the plant. And here we see the beginning of the plant. And what is interesting here is that we injected bacteria, and in 3 days we obtained a good production of methane. So the growth of bacteria is fast, and it takes place with good reliability. We also obtain a good level of purity of the methane produced. This is the state of the art, so the production density is around 10 to 15 cubic meters per cubic meter of bed every day. Now we are at about 11, so we are comparable to the state of the art, but we would like to improve in this direction and have a production that is economically competitive. So incentive decrease would enable us to obtain a renewable methane at conditions that would pay the investment back. So also a financial balance. Thank you, Luigi Mazzocchi. Thank you. Now, let's move on, trying to understand what the new technologies in this world of biogas and biomethane, with the contribution of Leonardo Senatori, Green Gas Technologies Portfolio Leader of Pietro Fiorentini. Here you are. So you have the task of carrying on the topic, making us understand better what the biomethane-related technologies are to improve production. Good afternoon, and I would like to thank Luigi for introducing one of the new renewable gases other than biomethane of the first generation, that is from the purification of biogas, on which I do not have much to add, because then technologies were consolidated and mature. But one aspect I would like to commend is the scalability of these small decentralized productions to move to achieve the 35 billion BMCs per year, as we mentioned before. As Pietro Fiorentini, operating both domestically and at a global level, especially for renewable energy sources in Europe, there is a sub-use and underuse of gas grids. And we notice that especially on low-pressure gas grids in cities, because of their inability to manage an injection of biomethane when there is not enough consumption, so especially in summer months. So the idea is that solutions, technical solutions are available to change the paradigms of the monodirectional flows within the gas grid, therefore enabling a producer to inject constantly throughout the year biomethane at a decentralized level, favoring, when possible, a zero mileage consumption, that is a local consumption, and when the local grid can't absorb that, we can recompress gas from the distribution to the transport grid. So even if we lose electric energy, in this case, we make the production point and the transport point closer. So we saw before that in France, the reverse flow systems are a reality. You can see here the ecosystem of green technologies by Pietro Fiorentini, and you see the flow of the first generation biomethane towards a grid that has to evolve. We can move on to the second generation of biomethane, and here we move from waste to sludges, biomasses or residues that have got a higher solid content. For example, wood, industrial residues, agriculture and forestry waste, sorted waste, that to go back to being gas must undergo gasification processes and therefore reach an intermediate result that is hydrogen and carbon monoxide, and that must be then transformed into, for example, a second-generation biomethane. Compared to the first generation, here technical challenges are stronger. So there is no technical solidity yet to sell this technology, but in the last few years the industry has strengthened a lot. And we as Fiorentini, we are giving our contribution for methanation technologies in syngas. What you see here is an on-field research center near Munich that we mentioned before, Biofarm, where through a clean tech that is part of the Pietro Fiorentini company, Micropyrus, we will push the performance of biology and plants to make these solutions competitive. We see the flow here, but I would move quickly to the third generation, or as we have heard lately, that is methane technologies. And to do this, I go back to the Symbios project that will be the first power-to-methane project in Italy on a megawatt scale in an industrial field, and it's a project between Pietro Fiorentini and Hera Group that will see a valorization of biogas that is produced today through the anaerobial digesters of a water purification plant in Bologna, and this will produce both first-generation biomethane and third-generation biomethane. What is the element defining where biomethane ends up? Well, it will be the green molecules. So we will exploit the network congestions that will provide a service to local distribution grids. When we have the green electron infed to the plant, there is, and we will produce hydrogen with electrolysis, and then this hydrogen will be mixed with biogas directly inside the methanation system, the biomethanation system, as Luigi mentioned before, and we will produce third-generation biomethane. Instead, where there is no low-cost renewable energy, we will simply do an upgrading with first-generation biomethane, and biomethane will be exploited locally. As Pietro Fiorentini, we will support Hera Group in providing an end-to-end solution, but we have technological enablers of some of our startups where we made investments over the last few years. One is known to us, which is Micropyrus, which we saw before for the biomethanation of biogas. The other is instead an Italian startup that has its own technology for electrolysis processes that will be implemented here. We can see the constellation of solutions by Pietro Fiorentini on this map, and we see that the flow of the third generation is complementary to what we saw before. I won't take more of your time on the production of renewable gas, because now there will be speeches about the new business models that will show us how we can make these chains increasingly more sustainable.
Grazie a voi. Grazie.
Thank you, Senatori. So we will move on, as Leonardo mentioned. So we will start opening a new chapter. We are getting closer to the world of transportation, where biomethane can definitely play a role. There is a big debate on the fact that it is difficult to electrify heavy-duty vehicles, but let's remember that one car weighs 1 ton. With trucks, actually the ratios change and the weight of batteries becomes an issue. So biofuels and biomethane may be a solution, but we need to liquefy it. And so we open this topic with a contribution by Juan Alvarez Carrasco.
He's connected with us. Carrasco, do we have Carrasco? I'm sorry. Scusatemi, questo errore mio, dimenticato.
This is my mistake. We have a pre-recorded message by Mr. Carrasco, which I will share with you, and it will start introducing us to the topic of liquefied gas. So, and a series of our related topics to the development of this type of energy.
Well, hello everyone. I would like to start thanking Pietro Fiorentini Group for having me and Naturgy at this event to talk about the role of bio-LNG to decarbonize transport in Europe. First of all, I would like to address the issue of transport emissions in the European Union, where more than 25% of all these emissions come from, of which more than 70% come from the road transport. In this regard, Europe has a good network of over 650 LNG refueling stations, where biomethane could be already available. Also, biomethane is currently the only sustainable alternative besides green electricity that is readily available and allows for a rapid decarbonization of transport. Moving on to the next target in the EU towards decarbonization, we have the maritime sector, ships, for which there are two main initiatives that may result in an increase in demand, which is expected for the coming years. These two initiatives are, on the first hand, the ETS extension, which shares the same key principles as other ETS sectors, for which companies have to monitor emissions and purchase and surrender ETS allowances for each ton of CO2. Also, we have the FuelEU Maritime Initiative, which is more of a complement to the ETS, with the target of addressing technology issues related to fuels. It is also expected to provide some regulatory predictability. And in this context, we expect that bio-LNG will play quite a significant role in the bunkering sector for the coming years. Finally, I would like to end this presentation moving towards a low carbon index renewable fuels, and also to talk a little bit about the value that biogenic CO2 has. For illustration purposes, 17% with a 70% of biomethane or bio-LNG in our portfolio, we could already achieve around a 30% reduction in emissions compared to diesel. If 100% of the supply were to be biomethane from feedstock, waste feedstock or manure or others, emissions could even be negative. Now, talking about carbon capture and liquefaction, this brings a good opportunity for all existing and future biomethane plants for the following reasons. First and most immediate, it improves the CI score of the product, which will become a trend in the future valorization of the various renewable fuels. It also creates an additional revenue stream for the project if CO2 is allocated in near greenhouses or food industries. And now this is more of a long-term shot. Bio CO2 might be valuable in a future where e-fuels or synthetic fuel plants begin their production using green hydrogen and biogenic CO2. So that's all for us. Thank you once again.
Grazie a Juan Alvarez Carrasco, Renewable Gases Project Manager di Naturgy, così lo presento, visto che mi ero dimenticato prima, diamo il benvenuto. It's a pleasure to me to introduce Lena Friedman. Welcome. Head of Business Unit CMF Fuels, DCM Fluids, who is a company that converts, I know that you convert, let me say, gasoline, bus or vehicles to LNG, and you are also working in the field of promoting new projects in the fields of methane and LNG, which is a very good opportunity to decarbonize EV transport, where we don't have a solution ready to be applied for the moment.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having a look at the German perspective on decentral bio-LNG production and the usage or potential usage in heavy transport. And that's exactly the goal of CM Fluids, to produce local fuel for local fleets from biogas plants. And yeah, in the next 5 minutes, I just want to give you a short introduction in the projects we are developing and also the overall potential that this solution has, as well as the regulatory and political challenges that we still have to face or solve ideally.
Yeah.
So this slide.
Please go ahead.
Okay, just the clicker, so I have to wait for it. So this slide is summarizing our overall vision. Our goal is to make heavy-duty transport climate positive with bio-LNG, and we want to install regional circular economy with bio-LNG using existing biogas plants in Germany, liquefying on-site, especially because there are many plants in Germany not connected to the gas grid or not close to a gas grid, and then bring it to the next filling station to provide the bio-LNG as a fuel for either the huge amount of bio-LNG trucks that is on the streets already, or for our upcycled city buses that we can, where we can retrofit old diesel buses. So here is our first project. It is close to Munich. You see on the picture here the Munich airport quite next to it. And the Munich airport has also our prototype of the first upcycled bus. And the yellow dot indicates the location of the biogas plant there. Mm-hmm. This biogas plant digests waste from regional restaurants and from the dairy production there. And this will just be a small 1 ton per day production with a small fueling station for this bus and a local logistics company. And then the second project is close to Nuremberg, and so a bit more north. And what we're doing here is adding CO2 liquefaction to also make use of this stream. Very close to this biogas plant is the so-called Knoblauchsland, which is a vegetable production area, and they use a lot of CO2 to fertilize these greenhouses and to make the plants grow there. So there we can again install a regional circle, giving this CO2 from the biogas to these greenhouses, taking back wastes from this vegetable production as well as horse manure that is available in the area. And then I wanted to show a fourth project that is a farmer with a huge milk production. He has around 3,000 cows there in stalls, and already digests all the manure of them. And the idea there is to now make bio-LNG from this biogas and also bring it into local transportation. Yeah, so this is just a short introduction. On the map here, you see we are working on building more and more projects to really show what we can do there, show how it can look like to close these regional cycles and to make this solution visible. And overall, it is important to notice that it is not a small niche solution, even if the single projects are small. Overall, we have in Germany already 9,500 biogas plants, and they are spread all over. Most of them are pretty small, especially in comparison to the plant sizes in other countries. But overall, we could reach a yearly production of 6.5 million tons of bio-LNG if we would liquefy all of it. And that equals 20% of the existing German diesel market. So if you imagine to add biological methanization, you would reach 40% of diesel replacement. And that's quite a lot, I would say. If we even look further and look at the, so that's just a theoretical perspective to the world, if we would assume that the amount of biogas produced in Germany is in the ratio to the agricultural area that we have in Germany, and we assume that this is socially acceptable, this ratio, and we put this ratio on the agricultural area that is available on the world, this would enable us to produce as much bio-LNG, which could replace as much diesel to reduce emissions of the man-made CO2 emissions by 12%, which equals roughly the total emissions of USA. So to enable and really empower this movement, I also want to show some regulatory schemes that we are working with and that can be optimized at the same time. So here we have the Renewable Energy Directive, which is the basis for quota trading, which enables the business case. And you see here in blue how long this regulatory is made. It's always with ending in 2030 or something. And to build biogas infrastructure, to build the liquefaction projects, you need at least 2 years of project development and delivery of the components, and then these plants can run for 20 years or so. So this does not quite fit together, and it could be much more cost effective if the regulatory scheme would work in similar timeframes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lena, for your intervention. I'm afraid we need to stop now. Thank you for your intervention. And now we go ahead with this focus on the usage of biomethane in the transport sector with the intervention of Ismael Callejon. Is this the right pronunciation?
More or less.
More or less, which is more?
Thanks. Callejon.
Callejon, okay. So, welcome, and then we go in deep in some of the advanced technology that are used for to enhance the production of biomethane.
Yes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Buon pomeriggio. I will present, because we are talking a lot about biomethane, biogas, but in ADD CryoInox are trying to offer to the market the solutions regarding the liquefaction and the cryo upgrading, separation by cryogenic solutions, liquefaction of the biomethane or liquefaction of the CO2. In all our designs are really focused to not only to produce this renewable source that is really important for Europe, we are really focused on the quality of that source. And the quality of the source is linked to the carbon footprint. What is the CO2, the grams of CO2 per megajoule that is linked to this fuel? When we are talking especially with bio-LNG, that the target is to be used as a fuel for the transport, maritime sector, train, railways, or trucks for transport of goods, then the most important thing is fulfill the directive of 2018 that limits a percentage of reduction against the standard level of 94 grams CO2. And then we need to be focused how to reach this 18.8 grams CO2 per megajoule of the fuel using energy, the energy that we'll use if it's collected from the grid nowadays is around 464 grams per kilowatt hour electrical, and then we need to do as much efficient as possible our equipments, and also we need to put in place the carbon capture. If we capture the CO2 from the biogas for this methanogenic CO2, and this CO2 is replacing CO2 fossil, the impact on quality on the biofuel is a reduction of minus 42. What is our target? What we are doing is to develop the equipment that will be integrated in the several systems that we have been seeing during the presentations, in the way that we are collecting the biogas, we are able to separate and to produce bio-LNG and liquid CO2. The liquid CO2 can be transported and to use for industrials or alimentary industrials, or basically in the future, when everything will be developed in a more economical scale, to produce the methanation in order to create the biomethane or the synthetic natural gas. And then we can close the loop and we'll be able to produce more bio-LNG. This is a little bit the driver of the development of technology. Collecting the several capacities that we have in the Pietro Fiorentini group, in reality, we are offering to the market several kinds of integration or application integrated. From only be thinking on the regular upgrading that is injecting to the pipeline with trying to be very efficient, only adding 6.45 grams CO2, or the upgrading plus the liquefaction that is increasing 1193, to the solutions that has integrated the CO2 liquefaction. From the membranes, and with the off gas we produce the liquid CO2 or the cryo-upgrading separation. Or everything integrated to produce bio-LNG and liquid CO2. With all these kind of solutions, we'll be able to increase the quality of the biofuel, of the bio-LNG or the biomethane that we are injecting to the grid, in order to be able to reach the targets that are imposing of the renewable fuel, and especially for the fuel to be used as a transport, as a vector of renewal. Thank you very much for your attention. Grazie mille.
Thank you to Ismael, General Manager di Cryo Inox.
General Manager of Cryo Inox. Now, the speech by Mattia Maritati, Gas Business Development Manager of Iveco. Welcome. So we continue talking about possible role of biomethane in decarbonization, especially of heavy transport, from the point of view of one of the main manufacturers of heavy-duty vehicles. Maritati, the floor to you. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Pietro Fiorentini for the invitation. Yes, we carry on with biomethane for transportation, and I would like to start with the commitment that the group undertook to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2040, so a target that refers to direct and indirect emissions. Specifically, with our products being used, we have a clear roadmap of development and implementation of alternative drives. Our roadmap is based on three pillars: mobility on biomethane and gas, battery-driven vehicles, and hydrogen-driven vehicles. So it's a clear roadmap based on the principle of technological neutrality. So we believe that these three technologies can coexist with the goal of achieving decarbonization. Today, clearly, we have a focus on biomethane transport, where Iveco has 30 years of experience and more than 40,000 vehicles sold. A technology that Iveco developed on a large-scale base, also on larger applications, the ones that produce more CO2, like long-distance ones. And it's a leadership that is recognized by the market, with market shares in excess of 57% in all the business segments. As we can see, we are inside a technological revolution that started some years ago. And evidence of this is that year on year, the volumes of gas-fed vehicles have followed growing trends up to a penetration in 2021 of 4% of the total European market, with more than 35,000 vehicles that are on our roads. But what should we expect for the future? For sure, our powertrain mix that will change. So we will certainly see the progressive introduction of electrification, so electric drives, that will offset the progressive reduction of traditional drives, in particular diesel, which we expect to drop below 50% before 2030. But it is important to notice that gas mobility will not only gain volumes compared to the physiological decrease we saw in the last year caused by energy crisis and the cost of raw materials, but it will continue, and it will have a role also in the medium and long term because of a key factor, namely the increasing availability of biomethane. Therefore, biomethane will be the element that will bridge gas trucks into the future. Here, I do not want to cover concepts that were already explained before, but I would like to focus on two aspects, challenges and benefits. The challenge is certainly the availability of biomethane. We welcomed favorably the target of 35 BCMs within the Repower EU, but at the same time, the uses of biomethane can't be decided by a law. So we must leave large space for use, and heavy transport will certainly absorb a good share of biomethane to decarbonize the transport world. Obviously, we do not expect to decarbonize the entire transport world with biomethane, but we can't deny its contribution. Indeed, even if just to see visually the contribution of biomethane in heavy-duty transportation, feeding a vehicle with biomethane would obtain the same result of 72 electric cars fed with electricity, with renewable energy. So, a biomethane vehicle without installing deviations in terms of independence, etc., and also in terms of times for refueling. Well, I imagine that this note is also linked to the recent decision of the European Union of not considering biofuels and not even biomethane, and this is not my opinion or the opinion of Pietro Fiorentini. That is certainly the most mature biofuel, but I guess that your concern is that this applies also to heavy duty. So I think it's a clear message. Thank you, Mattia Maritati. Now we have the last chapter of this long marathon. It's a little bit longer than we expected, but we thought it would be so. So let's start considering the aspects of investments and finance. There is no industrial activity that can do without it. For sure, the industrial world of biomethane are not exempted, so we have Paolo Gaffuri. We have the Energy Complete solution that will talk about investments. Sorry, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I made a mistake in the order. Sorry, Mr. Balussu.
I didn't recognize your face before. Group Strategic Domain Senior Energy Advisor di Crédit Agricole. So a French bank, a very big French bank group, which is investing in biomethane. So here we are to listen to your opinion. Please.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the introduction to Pietro Fiorentini. I will address in this speech the key challenges and opportunities faced by banks on the French biomethane market, starting first with the challenges that we face currently in a very tough macroeconomic environment. First challenge concerns the biomass feedstock. We need to ensure that the feedstock is properly secured in terms of price and amount over the most part of the financing duration, approximately 80% of the duration ideally. In the meantime, it is important for us to make clear that the feedstock seasonality is properly managed by the plant operators, especially for just-in-time delivered biomasses. Also bearing in mind that the total French potential for biogas is currently and regularly revised downwards. We are now, I would say, quite far from the 140 terawatt-hour, which have been estimated for the horizon of 2050 for biogas a few years ago. So there is a key point of attention on the resource. The second one concerns the surge of interest rates. Indeed, over the whole last year, the financing conditions have been strongly evolved. We were 1 year ago by rates between 1 and 2%, and now currently moving between 4 and 5%. So, with a minimum DSCR of 1.30 for biogas, it means that the equity share requested from the project has been then increasing considerably. Another key point and key challenge concerns the increase of capex, wholesale prices and biomass feedstock price. As you can see in the figure here, this increase that has been observed since 2020 are really impacting and sweetening the operating profits and the profitability, especially for new biomethane installations in France. It is then key and appropriate for plant operators to find some ways of optimization and in particular to develop OPEX minimization strategies. The last challenge concerns the reliability and availability of industrial plants. Indeed, we have seen in the past year a significant gap that has been observed between the production, which has been announced by large-scale plant operators, mainly based on industrial residues and waste, versus the production that has been actually achieved and observed. This has for consequence to generate very low DSCRs, which potentially remain below, in some cases, below the default DSCR. Looking now at the key opportunities on the market, we can say first that the newly enacted in 2022 biogas production certificates mechanism from the supplier side will provide a key impetus to the French biomethane sector. It is an extra budgetary mechanism, and this will provide new impetus and on a market that has been slowing down since November 2020. A second opportunity concerns the mobilization of new biowaste potentials. Indeed, we see there an opportunity potentially linked with biowaste valorization fees for the plants that are equipped with deconditioning or hygienization lines. It will then generate a source of additional income revenues for the operators and allow a substantial DSCR increase. A third opportunity relates then to the revision of the biomethane feed-in tariffs in France. This is hot news, which will be enacted in the forthcoming days. Revisions concern in particular the feed-in tariff indexation, so energy, power and gas prices. And this revision will imply that we'll see an increase of the feed-in tariffs, which will improve the profitability and then the bankability of the projects. The last key opportunity concerns the upside potential for new kind of plants, meaning the CO2 the valorization of bio-CO2 from anaerobic digestion being liquefied and sales and generated for plant operators. This is a technical one, but having also financial impacts for the new projects that we will follow closely. Many thanks for your kind attention. Thank you. Grazie mille.
Grazie lei, Balussu.
Thank you, Mr. Balussu. Let's say that many aspects of what is relevant for the financial world is also important for the industrial world. For example, the aspect of continuity, the possibility of having long-term visions in order to plan. So thank you, Mr. Balusu. Now we have the contribution with a recorded video. Matteo Botto Paola, Managing Director, Infrastructure Investing of Goldman Sachs, which is a very strong financial player that will talk from his point of view what is necessary for biomethane to be a successful investment. I would like to thank the Fiorentini Group for the invitation to this conference. I would like to take this opportunity to make my comments on 2 points. First, sharing the investments in the biomethane sector of financial investors like Goldman Sachs. And second, I would like to talk about the practical challenges to deal with to have a successful investment. As some of you might have seen, recently we announced the creation of a new company controlled by us that is called Verdaglia, with the investment of investing 1 billion capital in the next 4 years in the development, construction and or purchase and management of biomethane plants. The company is based in Spain, but we would like to expand in other European markets, starting from Italy. We have already purchased 5 plants being developed, and we have others under assessment. At a macro level, there are 3 strong elements pushing towards biomethane. First, decarbonization, which is more and more clear after the commitment on the part of governments and companies towards net zero targets. Second, energy security in gas provision, a topic on which the war in Ukraine has drawn attention. And third, the growth of circular economy, a topic that is not new, but on which Europe and national governments continue to push. In this context, European goals, which are well known to those working in the sector, foresee that market grows tenfold in 10 years, moving from 3 billion cubic meters in 2021 to 35 in 2030. And the logic is clear, because biomethane has a convincing answer for many of the needs of the energy transition. It uses a consolidated technology that has been on the market for a long time. It leverages existing transport infrastructures, unlike hydrogen. The potential of feedstock in Europe can account for between 50 and 100% of the gas demand expected in 2050, depending on the types of forecasts. And last but not least, the production cost of biomethane can already be competitive without considering 2 byproducts that will be more and more valuable in the future: organic fertilizers and CO2. So the introduction of incentives has the goal not of making sustainable what is not sustainable yet, but rather accelerating production to favor the achievement of those 35 billion cubic meters by 2030, which are the European target. Now, the answer to the question why biomethane is clear. But rather, the question to be asked is how, or better, how can we invest successfully? The implementation of investments is not easy, because even if returns can be interesting, on the other side there are significant risk factors. The main risk factors I see are 4. The first one is the procurement of organic material. The resource does not come from the sky, but it must be procured, and this depends on volumes of supplies, but also price stability, quality, diversification, and so on and so forth. The second risk factor is the operational effectiveness linked to the complexity of the biological process of anaerobial digestion, depending on the diet of feed, of stock. The third are the risk of possible limitations in the supply chain for the construction of new plants. And fourth, the authorization times, in particular in Italy, considering the deadline of 2026. I conclude by saying that meetings like this one are very welcome to exchange best practices and ideas between operators to enable this sector to grow durably over time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Grazie a Matteo Botto Poala. Anche qui tornano una serie di aspetti che erano già stati sollevati nell'intervento precedente. Penso a quello di Crédit Agricole, per esempio sulla necessità di avere una certezza sull'approvvigionamento, così come le questioni legate alla normativa e alle tempistiche autorizzative. Adesso chiudiamo questo ultimo blocco, dedicato soprattutto agli aspetti di programmazione finanziaria e di investimenti, con l'intervento, adesso sì, di Paolo Gaffuri, Energy Complete Solution, direttore della Strategic Business Unit Energy Complete Solution di Pietro Fiorentini.
Grazie.
Benvenuto, che ci spiega appunto di quali investimenti state facendo e di cosa avete in mente.
Ma non solo degli investimenti vorrei parlare, ma anche un po' ricollegandomi all'ultimo intervento, alle difficoltà e alle complessità di questo mercato, perché abbiamo visto, quindi un po' dovendo riassumere tutta la giornata, grandissime importanza del ruolo del biometano, grandissime opportunità, ma nuove sfide da affrontare.
Alcune che si riportano.
It's a great opportunity, of course, but it's very important to stress them. So, as apparently, it's a very complex situation, and it's difficult to learn several lessons from them. There are several factors that are coming into play, and so there are microorganisms, there are European limits, there are European institutions. Yes, this situation is very complex, of course. So there are great challenges, but also great opportunities, but first and foremost, great challenges. So let me summarize what Fiorentini can do to help our customers cope with these challenges. We saw that the biomethane sector is a complex sector. Let me summarize what the criticalities are that an investor would face in this market. First of all, technology. Technology for upgrading is consolidated, but it's much more complicated than cogeneration technology. So it's an all new concept. So we were talking about business planning too. So financial planning is not trivial. There are several factors and skills that have to be taken into account, and you need to know the context. It's not just drafting a normal business plan just to understand whether you can have any profit or not. Regulations, of course, there are some incentives, but sometimes it's difficult to understand how these incentives are accessible, and the regulation is very complex. Financing in the end, so accessing credit. There are financing institutions and bodies, but making requests and applying for those funds is very difficult and complicated, and funds are not always available because the business is growing at a very high speed rate, and therefore it's very difficult to get the time and apply on time to get the funding. So Fiorentini has always attached much importance to the customers. Customers are at the center of our operation because we think that we want to become solution providers. We want to help customers solving those problems. We have 80-year-long experience in terms of planning, designing, production. We also have a great capacity of creating relationships between customers and transport and distribution stakeholders and financial stakeholders, so we can have a reliable partner to overcome these challenges. So what is the added value Fiorentini can give to the customers when taking into account the 4 challenges that I depicted? So from the technical point of view, of course, we have a great experience, a long-standing experience in terms of technology, a consolidated technology, and also an ecosystem of solutions. And in this ecosystem, we can find the best solution suiting a specific project, because every project can be very different from another project, and therefore we are providing the right solution. We have BRMI, biofarms, in BIOS, we have several solutions, innovative solutions in several fields, but first and foremost, we are protagonists in terms of introducing new technologies in the future. And future technology also has to be taken into account when a business plan is developed, because technology development is included in the business plan. There is an impact in terms of investment and operational costs, but of course there's an impact in terms of carbon footprint, and everything has to be taken into account. The possibility to get to access specific funding and financing instruments. So the development of a business plan is very important and requires specific skills which are different from the skills you need to draft a normal business plan. In terms of regulation, of course, we can also offer an important service to the customer, technical, legal competence and skills in order to fulfill anything that is required to get to the authorization and to be compliant with the necessary rules and regulations. And last but not least, access to credit, so financing and funding. The subsidiary of the Fiorentini Group and also the consolidated experience of the Fiorentini Group facilitates dialogue and exchange to access credit. So it's not just a supplier-customer relationship with our customers. We also want to put forward a new business model for our customers. We want to become co-investors with our customers in order to join our competencies and skills. As we said during the last presentations, one important point is feedstock supply, because customers can be experts in terms of feedstock supply. And this is a competence they have. We have competences in financing, operational competencies, and plant management competencies and skills. So we're not just suppliers, but we are co-operators and co-investors and financiers or funders. And we can have a very strong relationship in this sense. The supply chain is also very delicate as a subject, and in the presentation of our colleagues, we can see how we are locally oriented. We can deliver quality plants for liquefaction, but also we can be part of the supply chain, and it's very important because we can have a control on the supply chain and be local as well in a very rapidly growing market where we need to be reactive and ready, where you need to be ready to manage plant production too. So just to recap, when you're surrounded by great opportunities, you also have great challenges. And based on what all the stakeholders said, we can say we have a great professionalism and a great passion. So just to quote the former CEO of Starbucks, when you're surrounded by people who share passionate commitment around a common purpose, anything is possible. So we strongly believe we can do something in this sector. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Gaffuri. And now let's conclude so in the meantime, welcome back Cristiano Nardi. We can conclude our meeting, but just a question. You've already implemented biomethane in traditional sectors, or is it a new entry, a new thing? Yes, it's a new idea because we saw the opportunity of becoming investors and operators ourselves, because we believe that in this world's evolution and in this sector's evolution and energy requirements, putting together, so teaming up skills and competencies and different responsibility areas can be an acceleration factor. And in this very moment, I think the biggest challenge is to seize the opportunities we have in terms of timing, in terms of goals, and in terms of incentive limits, so 2026 for Italy is a deadline. So everything is urgent, energetic transition is urgent, and it's a very widespread topic. Energy transition is a very complex topic too. We are talking about it several times, and we believe there's no silver bullet, and I think this is a widespread idea among energy operators, and every stakeholder, each and every stakeholder can contribute in a different way, some straight away and some maybe later on, but for sure this is a moment where this energetic transition path is possible and is absolutely feasible based on what we said. Today we've had the opportunity to have several stakeholders in different areas and sectors, and the financial sector as well, last but not least, which is also a very important aspect. The message we want to convey is exactly this. The challenge, as Paolo was saying, is a big challenge, but we have the right ingredients to cope with this challenge, because the financial system is there for investors and funders. It's a very important flywheel. We have technologies there, incentives can help acceleration, foster acceleration. So all of the preconditions are there. Technology evolution, innovation, improving opportunities, as we said, is a building site, is an ongoing project. So I think we can get to the aims we set. I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this event. I'd like to thank all of those who listened to the presentations. I'd like to thank the organizers, and I'd like to thank Maurizio as well for moderating our meeting. As usual, your work is very useful and important. So see you soon, and we're going to talk about important topics we have to tackle. Thank you very much once again for your attention.